GuthriePhotographyOnline.com coming at you with a new video today. Today we are going to talk about how to set up your Nikon D3300. It's actually pretty simple. This video is going to be rather long. I planned this video to be around an hour, 45 minutes to an hour long. And it's going to go through every menu setting, every button, everything that's on this camera that you can possibly do. So let's get started. I have my Nikon D3300 right here. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to turn the camera upside down, and we are going to open up the battery case. As you see, there's a battery there. If you would like to take it out, you push this little orange lever back, you turn it upside down, and it comes right out. And then when you want to put it back in, you're going to take it and you're going to push the orange lever out of the way with the battery. You're going to push it in till it clicks, and then you're going to shut the battery door like that. That is how you put the battery in the camera. Now, as you see, there's like a hole drilled on the bottom here of this camera. Now, many of you would probably wonder, what the heck is that for? Well, I'm going to tell you. This hole on the bottom of the camera is called a tripod mount. The tripod mount is so you can add your camera to a tripod, which has a little nut that comes out of the tripod and will fit into this hole. To do so, all you would have to do is you'd have to line this hole up with the tripod mount screw, and you would twist it around until it tightened up and until it was completely put on. Now, next thing, moving around the camera, we're going to talk about, we've got your micro USB and you have your microphone input. Micro USB is for you can transfer your files directly from your camera to your computer. Again, I don't recommend this because this is not a proper way to transfer your files. It's very slow. I'd recommend just pulling the memory card out of the camera. Also, you have your microphone hole, which you can put an external microphone in the camera, so you can get better quality audio than what your camera can do itself. Okay, moving down to the next set of holes here, you have a AV in, AV out, which is so you can hook your camera up to your TV, so you can have a slideshow presented on your TV, and you also have a HDMI cable, and that is also a connection so you can connect your camera to a TV or to a monitor. Okay, next set of buttons that we're going to look at. That's hard to get back in there. Next set of buttons that we're going to look at, we're going to go to the top of the camera here. Top of the camera, as you can see, is we have a hot shoe. The hot shoe is for, like I said about the external microphones, you can attach an external microphone to this hot shoe. You can attach a external flash to this hot shoe. This hot shoe is for any Nikon accessory that is hot shoe attachable. Next thing going around the camera here, next thing we're going to look at is we have a pop-up flash button. This button will pop up the flash on a manual setting if you need it. This is a quick way to get your flash popped up in a hurry if you need it. And we also have a function button, which you can program within the back of the camera to set this function to do pretty much whatever you need. Now, moving around the camera, you have your lens, or you have your cover on your top of your you have your cover over the top of your sensor. To take this off, you just twist and it comes off. And to put it back on, you twist this back on and it goes back on. You want to keep this on at all times if you do not have a lens attached to your camera. It is very important. It helps keep dust out. any other particles, and you never want to touch the inside of this area here. This should never be touched with anything. It's very sensitive, and you can ruin your camera, and a sensor repair is very, very, very expensive. Next thing we want to go to on this camera here is the on and off button. To turn on, you go towards the right to turn it on, and to turn it off, you go towards the right. Turn it on, you come back towards the left. On, off, on, off. Now I know some of this stuff is pretty simple for a lot of you guys out there, but I think it is very important to share this with you guys, because there is a lot of people out there that have never had a DSLR camera and need this type of information. So if you would like to skip ahead in the video, I'm going to include timestamps in the notes below for different sections of the video. This video should be parted up into 2 to 3 different sections. So next thing we're going to look at is this nice silver button on here. Can anybody guess what the silver button does here? The silver button is your shutter release button. This is how you take a picture. When you hold this button halfway down, it allows your camera to focus. And once you hear the focus beep, which is automatically enabled on your camera, once you hear that focus beep, then you can press it all the way down, and you can take a picture. So you press it halfway down to get into focus, and then you push it all the way down, and it takes the picture. Halfway, focus, all the way down, takes the picture. Now, next thing we're going to go to on this other side of the camera is the memory card reader slot. This camera takes one SD card. The SD card will fit in only one way, so we'll go with the contacts facing the back of the camera. And don't get worried if you forget how to put the SD card in, because it will only go in one way. And then once you push it in, you'll hear a click. And then if you want to take it out, you push it back in and it'll click out. Push it in, you'll hear a click. Then if you want to take it out, you push it back in, you push it in and it clicks out. Then you close this up. Now we're going to go to the function buttons on the back of the camera. These buttons here, this is your D-pad. This is how you select your multi-selector and how you select different options on the back of your screen here. You also have a trash can button, which guess what that does? It deletes your photos off your camera. I know, guys, this is thrilling stuff here that we're getting into. You also have a button here that you can choose your multi-burst button. You can choose how many shots in a row your camera takes with this button here. You just push it and you just choose your selections there. And you also have a live view button. This button right here will send your camera into live view, which means you will be able to take pictures off the back of your screen. Now, I do not recommend this, because this is traditionally not the proper way to take a photo, and you're not able to get you're not able to pay attention to the detail that you would if you went into your viewfinder to get the photo. That brings us to the viewfinder. The viewfinder is how you put your eyes up to the camera to take your photo. The viewfinder is very, very important. The viewfinder has information inside of it that will tell you when your pictures are in focus. It will also have a meter to make sure, so you can make sure that your exposures are being metered properly. And you can also set that through the settings menu on the back of the camera, which I will explain later on in this video. Next buttons we have here is a playback button, a menu button, a magnifying button, a demagnifying button and a, what's that last one down there? What is that? Well, I don't know what that one is, so we'll have to go into the manual to find that one out. So the first one we're going to look at is the playback button. This is how you access your photos on your camera. If you want to go through, you hit the playback button, and then you would go to your D-pad over here and you can scroll through your photos. Now if you want to delete one, you would hit, you'd find the photo, you'd scroll through, and then you would hit this nice delete button on the back. It's going to ask you if are you sure, and then you would hit delete again. The next thing is the menu button. This is how you access the Nikon menu that I'll explain later in this video. You push this button to turn it on, you push it again, it goes away. Now you have a magnifying glass. If you want to see more detail in your photos, you want to use this magnifying glass. It'll magnify it in. And the next one down is that magnifying out glass that will magnify it out. This also has a question mark over the top of this magnifying out button. Now, if you need, for some reason, that you don't know how to do something in your camera, you can hit this button here in the settings menu. Anything that has a question mark next to it in the settings menu, you can push this button and it will give you a brief description on what that function does. Now, I will show you this to you later on in the video when I go through the entire back of the camera. Now, next things we're going to go over is we have this dial up here. This is your mode selector dial. This goes through and you can select all of your different functions on your camera. Now, when I use this, I leave it in manual mode. But you have many different functions, which I will go over now, starting with the auto menu. The auto menu is what it is. It's fully auto. It doesn't let you select any of the settings. The camera chooses what's best for you. Scrolling down through, you have the next one on here, which is the lightning bolt with the line through it. That means that this flash will not pop up when you take the photo. As an auto, that flash will always pop up when you take the photo. This is good for when you are in a museum or someplace where you cannot use a flash. Not very many places don't allow you to use flash, but there is a few. And then you have the portrait lady on here. The portrait lady is what it is. The camera selects the proper exposure that it thinks it's good for a particular portrait. Then you have the landscape, self-explanatory again. This is for landscape mode. This is if you want to take pictures of mountains or anything outside, this setting is good for that. Then you have, next thing you have is the child mode. Now this is for action with children. If the child's running at you, if you're trying to get a child in a playground or something like that, this is what this mode is for. Next one you have is the running man mode. Can anybody guess what the running man mode is for? Well, it is for sports. This mode, and this is the mode that I started out with because I started out shooting action with race cars and whatnot. This mode right here will set your shutter speed and aperture to an appropriate thing that the camera believes for sports. Next thing we have on here is the flower mode. No, I'm not going to give you flowers, but this mode right here is for anything that's close-ups. It's like your macro shooting. This is for like if you want to take pictures of bees, if you want to take pictures of your grandma's flowers outside, that's the mode for you. Now, the last mode on here, then going through the dial here, the next mode is the manual mode. Like I said, this is the mode I keep it in all the time. This mode controls nothing. It puts the whole entire camera in the palm of your hands and allows you to choose everything that you want to do. Then you have aperture priority. The camera will set everything except for your aperture. So if you just want to concentrate on how to set your aperture, this is a good learning tool here because it'll allow you to experiment with how the aperture works. This is called aperture priority. It allows you to set the aperture. The camera sets everything else. Then you have, turn it again, you have shutter priority. Again, the camera will set the shutter speed, or you will set the shutter speed, and the camera will compensate for everything else. These are two good learning modes to be in because it allows you not to worry about anything else but that particular thing, the aperture and the shutter speed. Then you have program mode, or professional mode as some people call it, but it's not professional mode. It's just another version of the auto mode with a little bit more features unlocked in your camera. And that, my friends, is the mode selector dial on the back of your camera. Back the settings menu in your new Nikon D3300. The first menu that we're going to look at is the playback menu. And the first button that you see on here is going to be the delete button. It will delete the last photo that you have taken, or you can also scroll through the photos and you can also delete that way. The next menu item down is your playback folder. Your playback folder, you're able to rename it. I cannot rename it right now, but it is set automatically from the factory at the default of the D3300 playback folder. This is the folder that you will find when you go and try to access your memory card from your computer or laptop. You could change this to anything you like at any particular time. What I preferably like to use is actually what I preferably like to use is what it is right now. We'll just keep it at the D3300. This was what keeps track of what camera that I was using on that particular day for that particular shoot. Your playback display options is the next function on here. The playback display options will be, you'll be able to add additional photo info. Let's go into there. So you can have no additional photo info, which will just be your basic photo on the back of your screen. The highlights is the little whited out sections in your photo, the overexposed sections, which is the one that's checked right now. But we're going to uncheck that because I don't like to show any highlights or anything on my back of my screen. I just want to see the basic photo. The RGB histogram is also unchecked because I don't want to see the histogram next to the photo. Like I said, I want to use the full screen to see if I've gotten the picture correctly exposed within the camera. And then you have your shooting data, which will be your lens length that it was shot at, your ISO, and your shutter speed and your aperture. That will be overlaid over the top of your photo on the screen. And then what I like to do was the overview of the photos. We're going to untick that too because I do not like to, like I said, I do not like to have any additional options when shooting my photos. When shooting on my screen, I just want to see the basic photo because I want to be able to give me the best opportunity to make that choice in what my photo was shot at, and to see if I need to redo the photo itself. So we're going to get out of this menu. We're going to go back and we're going to, and for transitions effects, we have either on or off. The display options, the transitions between the photos on the back of the screen. You can do this whether you want to or not. That is totally up to you. You can play around with it yourself. I just leave it off from here. So now we're going to go back into the regular playback menu. I have the review image as a defaulted. We leave that on because I want to be able to see the image as soon as it is taken on the back of the camera to make sure that I have exposed the picture properly. Rotate tall. When you take a portrait style shot, it's going to rotate it tall as on the screen to show you what it will actually look like as a portrait style photo. We're actually going to turn that off because because when you rotate it tall, you'll get black bars on either side of the screen. And that's something you don't want. You want to be able to use the full screen for the best possible image on the back of your screen. you want to make sure that you're able to see every pixel that you can possibly see. And when you rotate it tall, it ends up looking like a cell phone photo. So we're going to keep that we're going to keep rotate tall at off. So next thing, we're going to go down to slideshow. This is an option where you can plug it into your TV or computer and you can run a slideshow. We don't need to know about that. If you want to know more about these features, there's a little question mark in the bottom of the screen, bottom left-hand corner of the screen. You can go ahead and you can hit the question mark, which is the second button on here, and it will tell you exactly what it does. And then, yeah, you can view slideshow of images in the current playback folder, and you can plug it in via HDMI cable to your TV. The DPOF print, I actually don't know what that means. So let's take a look. Let's go ahead and hit the question mark on the back of the screen. The DFO print, it says select images for printing with a DFO pre-compliant service or printer. Choose for a number of prints. Enough raw images cannot be selected during this option. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, you don't ever want to print your photos directly from your camera. And if you're shooting raw, like I always recommend, you never will be able to, because like it says in here, it will not support raw images to be sent directly to your printer. Next thing we're going to go into is the rating system. The rating system is a way you can rate your photos in the camera. Again, you want to make sure you take your card out and stick it in your computer because you want to see the best possible images on your computer. Judging your pictures on the back of a camera screen is probably not the best way to go about doing this. The next menu in the settings menu is the shooting menu. And the first setting on here is the reset shooting menu. If you have made a mistake in the shooting menu and you don't like the way your camera is performing at that particular time, you want to go ahead and you can reset it. It resets it to all the factory defaults. I'm not going to do that this time because I'm going to set this camera up the way I would shoot it if I was using this camera. The next selection in the shooting menu is the image quality. Now this is a very important to getting your images correct. So we're going to go in here. It's going to have multiple different options. Okay, we're going to have RAW plus JPEG, which means it's going to create that RAW file for you. It's going to create that large size file for you. So when you go back into Adobe Lightroom, Adobe Photoshop, or any other editing program, you'll be able to read that photo. But if you also want a JPEG to instantly share with your friends, family, or whatever, or if you're a professional shooter that just needs to have a image sent directly to a magazine or whatnot, I would suggest that you probably use RAW plus JPEG fine. The next one down is the RAW option, which I'm going to click on right now because I always shoot RAW. RAW is going to give you the best image, the highest quality file, and with the highest quality of file will automatically give you the ability to bring back context in your image that you won't get with a JPEG. JPEG fine is a JPEG image, which is a very small file. So if you're concerned about space, say if you have a small memory card and you need to make sure you have plenty of space for that, and you don't really care about your quality, you can shoot with JPEG fine. Again, I do not recommend it. JPEG normal is the basic JPEG. It'll give you a baked-in image. It will give you a lesser quality of image, and that is the basic setting when you first get this camera. And then JPEG basic is a very, very, very small file. I don't ever recommend that anybody use the JPEG basic. So again, we're going to keep it on camera raw because that's what I like to shoot, and that's what I'm going to shoot with this camera. And then we're going down to the image size, which we cannot get into. By default, it's set on large, which is perfectly fine. I mean, large size files, you can also change it to I believe a medium or a small size file. But again, why would you want to change that to a smaller file. You want to get the largest file you can to get the most data off that image that you possibly can. Your white balance, when I shoot, I always leave it on auto because, again, you can go back and correct your image in Lightroom, Photoshop, or any other imaging program to correct your white balance, and it is a lot easier via software than trying to correct in your camera. Because, again, if you set this to a wrong option, if you set this to let's say fluorescent in the JPEG option, all of your images that you take, if you accidentally set that, they're going to look blue. And if you're outside and you're trying to take pictures of Johnny's baseball game or soccer game or whatever, you get home and say, why are all my pictures blue? Well, you had it on the wrong white balance. So I'm going to recommend that everybody keep your white balance on auto, because you can always, if you shoot raw like I recommend, you can always go back and change it later. Set picture control. Let's go in and see what this is, because again, this is something I usually don't mess with because this is a JPEG option. Again, this is why I don't use JPEG, because everything that you set on this camera is very important. If you just use the raw settings on here, you don't have to worry about most of this stuff that I'm showing you today. But since this is a beginner course, we're going to go through everything on here. So let's go ahead and hit the question mark. Let's see what it says. Choose how new photos will be processed according to the type of scene or creative intent. Each picture control can be fine-tuned for more precise control over such settings as contrast and saturation. Standard processing for a balanced effect. So again, this is more of the standard processing. You have neutral, you have vivid, which is going to give you a bright color contrast. You have a monochrome, which is going to give you a black and white. We have portrait, and let me go back up to monochrome real quick, because if you do set it in monochrome, if you're shooting raw, you can always go back to the color picture. If you accidentally set this to monochrome in a JPEG setting, you won't be able to go back and set this to color image. But if you use raw, you can go back into your Lightroom, Adobe Photoshop, or any editing program, and you can set this into color, basically. You have a portrait, which is the camera software to determine, the best portrait lighting, and you have a landscape option. And back to standard. I just keep this on standard because, again, I use raw. Auto distortion control we keep off. Color space, I just use a standard RGB color space. Active D-lighting, we're going to turn that off. And just so you guys can see what active D-lighting is, we're going to hit the question mark. It improves the level of detail and highlight in shadow areas under contrast in certain conditions. Well, again, if you shoot raw, you don't need this. So I just turn it off. So next thing we're going to go back to, we're going to go down to noise reduction. I'm going to turn this off because it does affect the quality of your image. It can affect the quality of your image. ISO sensitivity right now. This is something that you can change using the dial on the back of your camera that we discussed earlier. I prefer to use it that way. For now, it's set on 100, but you can go in here and you can choose 100, 200, 400, 800, 1600, 3200, 6400, Swiss cheese mode, 12,800, or high 1, which is really, really bad, and lots and lots and lots and lots of grain. But for now, we're going to keep it on 100 for this purpose of going through the menus. Again, you can use the dial on the back of your camera to choose your ISO. So now we're going to go to the AF area mode. We're going to, since we're shooting photos, we're going to keep it into viewfinder. We're going to, here's all of your different single point AF. We'll give you a single box in the middle of your screen. Dynamic area AF will give you focus area focusing points that you can move around on your back of that you can see through your viewfinder to get the correct focus. The 3D tracking, the 11 points 3D tracking, this will automatically try to track your subject. And the auto area AF, the autofocus, this will also try to track your subject. For taking pictures like I normally do, we're going to keep it on single area AF for now. The built-in automatic focus assist illuminator, which is a little light that's on the front of the camera that I showed you guys earlier, we're going to turn that off because we don't need it. It's very distracting to your subjects. I believe it's very distracting to your subjects. Metering, I don't have a lens attached to this, so we're not going to be able to go through the metering, but you have a little, you can do your different matrix metering or whatever. But let's go ahead and see what it says. Measuring the brightness of a subject, determine the exposure. Available options are matrix metering, suited for most situations, center weighted metering, gradient for weighted assist in the center of this frame, and spot metering. Only its current focus points are metered. Now, I'm not a very technical shooter, so again, I will not be using. So the next thing on the shooting menu list is we have a flash control for built-in flash. Again, I don't use a lot of flash, and I mostly use studio lights, so I would just leave this at TTL. But if you want to, you can go in here and you can look at the different settings. We can do all of these different settings in here, but I'm going to leave it at TTL because I don't use a lot of flash. Next thing is your movie settings. Now this is an important one for some of you guys, because I know some of you guys love the movie settings. So we're going to go in here, and the first thing you're going to see is frame size, frame rate. And you're going to see I have it set to 1080 at 24, and there's a reason for that, which I will go through here in a minute. And then I also have movie quality set to high, because you always want your movie quality set to high, just like you want your picture quality set on high when you do regular photos. I mean, that's the only way to go. You have your microphone, you have your wind noise reduction, and you have your manual movie settings. So let's go into the frame size, frame rate tab. First of all, you're going to have 1920 by 1080 at 60 FPS. That is the standard size. That's what Nikon sets your camera up with at the original time of purchase. This is what you will see when you first purchase this camera. And you have 1920 by 1080 at 30 FPS, which is another setting that you can use. Then you have 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames a second. That's what I have it set at, because this is what all the movie studios use, this setting right here. This is what is going to allow you to have movie quality photos. Then you have 1280 by 720 at 60 frames per second. And then you have 640 by 424 at 30 frames a second. Again, we're going to leave it at 19 by 20 by 1080 at 24 frames a second, because that's what I would set it to. Then you have the choice between movie quality of high quality and normal. Again, your high quality, again, is what you want to keep at to get that nice big file. The bigger the file, the better. You can always dumb it down for lower quality things, like if you need to put it on YouTube or whatnot. Or you can always create that nice high quality file. So we're going to leave it on high quality. And the next thing we're going to have is the microphone settings. The microphone settings are automatically set to auto sensitivity. Auto sensitivity, I find out what works best, because I do not record my audio through my camera. I record it through an external microphone attached to an iPad. I use a Rode lavalier mic called the Rode. It's basically the Rode lavalier, which I will leave a link to in the description below for the type of microphone that I use. So we can either set that to auto sensitivity, manual sensitivity. Let's go in there. And then you can adjust it up and down depending on what you think is necessary. And it goes all the way up to 20 and all the way down to 1. 15 is a good level. Or you can just turn the microphone off, which is mostly what I do since I record via lavalier mic to my iPad. I use that, and I combined all my audio into the file during the editing process. So next thing we have is wind noise reduction. If you're outside and you need some wind noise reduction, this will do it for you. So you just hit the OK button on the back of your camera and you turn it on. But we're going to leave it off for now because we don't really need it. We're just going through the menu showing you how to set up your camera. Then you have your manual movie settings. You can set your manual movie settings to on, or you can leave them off and you can leave it on auto. And that is it for the shooting menu. So now we're going to go over and we're going to go into the setup menu on the back of your option screen on the back of your camera. The first thing you're going to see is the reset setup options. This option is used for if you want to reset your camera to the default factory settings. If you think you've screwed something up and you want to go back, you would just hit this button. And you would just scroll up to hit yes, and you would hit OK, and it will set everything back to factory settings for you. Okay, the next thing we're going to go down to is format memory card. If this camera had a memory card in it, and this is one thing that I recommend that everyone should do if they have a brand new camera and a brand new memory card, you need to go into format memory card. So you would hit OK. This one would obviously come up if you were going to do that. Basically, this is going to allow the memory card to conform to this particular camera. And every time that you are done with a shoot and you have offloaded your files to your computer, I recommend that you format your memory card each and every time. Do not ever use the delete button. That is not the way to go. And with that said, don't ever delete anything off the back of your camera, because you never know, some photos that you might have enjoyed are now gone because you didn't get to look at them in a bigger space. You didn't get to look at them on a big level. So now we're going to go to monitor brightness. I have it set to +5. By default, it is set to 0. So it can go, we're going to go back in here. So you hit the down arrow and it will decrease the brightness of the monitor all the way to -5 to pretty much dark. Or you can go back up, and I have it set to 5 because this is the best for recording the back of my display. But in general, I would keep this on 0. It's a nice neutral display brightness, because if you get a higher display brightness, it can affect the pictures on the back of your screen and cause you to make a mistake in your camera settings while shooting your photos. Info display format. You have auto scene, select effects. So this is the other menu that's on the back of your camera. You can go to classic, and you can go, there's a couple different things here, and you basically can choose the one that you want to set it up with. I normally go to classic because that's the one I'm used to. I'm used to the older Nikons, so I will leave it there on classic. Again, I will go to classic on the PS A&M because, again, that's the settings that I'm used to on my older Nikons. That's the one that they go to the most. It's just a display setting on here. And if you go to, I think it's menu. So we're going to go to menu. See, so this is the menu that I'm talking about. Let me turn that back on. This is the menu that I'm talking about that I just reset. This is going to show you all of your settings as well. It's going to show you the RAW. It's going to show you that your picture quality is set to large, your white balance is set to auto, your ISO is set to 100. And when you have a camera attached to the back of this will also show your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. So the next function that we are going to look at is called the auto info display. Now, I do not know what this is used for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the question mark on the back, because Nikon has these nice little information displays. So if you do not know what something is used for, you can always go to the back of the screen and we can always figure it out. It says choose on to turn the information display on when shutter release button is pressed halfway and released. So when you push your shutter button down at least halfway, your information display on the back of your screen will pop on. And then when you release it, it will stay on. I keep this off because it tends to wear down the battery. As you continue to shoot more and more photos, it continues to wear down the battery. And it's just a good thing to keep off. If you need to see the info display, you can always hit the info button on the back of the camera, and that will always bring up that display. Next thing we're going to talk about is the clean image sensor. This is a function within the camera. It doesn't work very well that I have seen. The clean image sensor button, when that is clicked, let's go ahead and click it, and you can hit clean now. It's going to activate a little motor inside of the camera itself, and it is going to shake the sensor a little bit, and it is going to clean off any dust from your camera sensor. Now, in my opinion, the only real way to clean your image sensor is to have it cleaned by a professional, and that is the next option on this screen, which is lock mirror up for cleaning. The mirror is the little mirror inside that projects the image out when you look through the viewfinder. And that's why your viewfinder goes dark for a few seconds, because you're not able to see that image while you're shooting the photo, because that mirror comes up, blocks your view, takes the picture, and snaps back down all within a half a second. And in order to clean your image sensor, you have to get that mirror out of the way. So for this, you would hit lock mirror up for cleaning, and then you would hit start. It would lock the mirror up so you can actually see the sensor itself. And then it would, the only way that you can get it to come back down is by turning off the camera and then turning it back on. It'll bring the mirror back down, and you'll be able to continue shooting. Now, I do not recommend as a beginner for you to clean your own sensor. Even as a professional, I just do not clean my own sensor. Most camera shops make this available for free, and it's just not something that is needed very often. In fact, I don't. I've only cleaned my sensor about 2 or 3 times since I've owned my D700, and unless it gets real bad when you go to like a beach or something like that, it's really not, in my opinion, it's really not that necessary. So the next thing is image dust off reference photo. So let's see what that means, because I have no idea. Let's see. Let's set the thing. Record a reference photo for an image dust off option and capture in X series software. This option is used to process enough raw images to reduce the effects of dust. If desired, the image sensor can be cleaned before image dust off. Okay, that's something I'm going to leave alone, because even I as a professional don't understand what that means. And we're going to have to just head back to the manual for that one, which I will take a look at later on, and if I find it relevant, I will add it to the end of the video. And then we're back. We go to flicker reduction. Flicker reduction is on auto. That's something that I would just keep it on auto, because as long as you're shooting raw, it does not apply and it doesn't apply to anything that you're going to be shooting as long as you're shooting raw. Auto is just the standard configuration, and that's the way, in my opinion, it should stay. The time zone and camera date, you can set up the camera date and time zone. So in your metadata, your time zone, your date and time, your date format, and your daylight savings time, it will be recorded on your metadata. So you'll be able to go back and you'll be able to search through your catalogs via this information if you would like. I don't do anything with that. You could set your language. So if you don't speak English, you could set it to something else. Image auto rotation. Image auto rotation, I turn off. And this again is for the reason of the cell phone black bars on the sides of the picture. When you import into Lightroom, I believe, it says record camera orientation when taking photographs. Yeah. That's images taken when off will be selected, will not be rotated for display during playback. Yes, this is the cell phone orientation where you have the black bars on the side. If you're sitting in portrait mode, I prefer, instead of rotating the image, just rotate your camera to look at the image itself. You want that bigger image on the small screen. Your screen's already small enough. You're going to want the bigger image. You can also leave an image comment. And a lot of times you can use the image comment to do your copyright information. I would put in Guthrie Photography in the image comment. That way every image will come across with that embedded in it. Auto timers. I don't use auto timers. We're just going to leave that at normal. And self timer. This self timer it'll give you 10. Let's say you want to get in the shot with your family. You can set it to 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 15 seconds, and it'll beep down. And then it will wait for a few seconds and it will take the photo. It'll give you time to get into the photo itself. It's a nice little thing. And then what else we got? We have the remote trigger settings, rangefinder. I don't use. We're not going to go through that because I find it not relevant to anything that any beginner will be using. File sequence numbers. It'll go through 1 to 1,000 or 1 to 9,999, and it will start back at 0 if you want to keep your file numbers in sequence. Buttons. What is buttons? This is the function buttons on the front. You can assign the different function buttons on the front of your camera in this menu right here that I showed earlier in the video. The front function buttons. Empty slot, empty release lock. This is set on because you don't want to be shooting pictures and thinking that you have a memory card in, and then all of a sudden you open it up and there is no memory card installed. You want to keep that on. Print date. Let's see. Print date. It is going to directly import photographs with the date and time of recording. Oh, it's going to print the date on the pictures. I keep that off. That's an old 90s style thing, and we just don't do that anymore, especially if you're a professional. The storage folder, you can rename your storage folder from the D3300. I keep that, I keep that to the defaults because you want to know what camera you're shooting with. Video mode, we keep an NTSC unless you're in European countries, I believe, which goes to PAL. HDMI, you have HDMI settings in here for your HDMI cables. Wireless mobile adapter, that is for Bluetooth, I believe. Let's take a look. Choose enable connection, disable connection, save power. Choose disable where the wireless devices are prohibited. Yes, it's a Bluetooth connection, so you're able to download the Nikon app and transfer your photos directly from your camera to your phone. That's something I'm not going to go over because I don't feel like it is relevant to the video. And then you can also update your firmware in the camera to see if you have a new firmware version. You'd have to go to nikon.com. That's something I don't recommend any amateurs do. This is the retouch menu. It has a bunch of baked in different items for you to go through and actually retouch your photos in the camera. I'm not going to go through that because you shouldn't be using retouching in the camera anyway. I think Nikon would do a solid favor if they would just take this function out of the camera. So our last settings menu. Oh, that is the recent settings. So this is going to the recent settings. So it goes through everything that I have changed on the recent settings. So if you want to see anything that you've changed recently, that is what this menu is for. So it keeps a list of about 10, 15 things that you've changed recently. And that is it for the Nikon menu system. We hope you enjoyed this video today, and we'd like to encourage you to like and subscribe to this video down on the right hand corner of the screen. If you would like to continue to support the channel, please let me know if you would like me to do another setup video with a different camera. I'd be glad to do that. It has been fun making this video. And just remember to like, subscribe, and share to anyone that you think this video would benefit. And make sure you hit the little bell icon and hit the way you would like to be notified on my next upcoming videos. Thank you. Guthrie Photography Online, signing out.